Hey, and welcome to Genre Chat. I'm Caleb Walton, and tonight I'm really excited to welcome Cristel Phelps to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing just fine. Thank you.
I am really excited to talk to you. I know we were speaking just a minute ago. You're an editor. You've been in the editing business for many years, have a lot of experience, and especially as for me as a new author for fiction and a little bit of nonfiction, it's really exciting to get to speak with someone who's been in the industry and knows all the ins and outs of the process. How did you become an editor and get into that part of writing?
Well, I think for a lot of editors, I would get a book or a magazine and find errors that just kind of made me cringe a bit, and then helping it at the church on the church bulletin, getting a church bulletin and realizing, oh man, that just didn't read right, and I think we've all seen those lovely things where all church bulletin bloopers and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, that's not what she meant, I'm pretty sure. So
social media must drive you crazy because
well, it is really difficult because I think even on some of the Facebook posts, I think everybody, if you have a favorite author, you go connect with them on Facebook, and then you end up finding out that people that you've really lifted up there, and that they're your favorite, and their posts on Facebook are needing some help.
I know I have a lady that used to go to our church that does not believe in the period. I want to take a Sharpie to my screen every time.
Yeah. Well, I think commas are way more severe if they're not used properly than a period. You can kind of figure out where the sentence ends, but boy, if you put that comma in the wrong place, you could be meaning something totally different.
Absolutely. What does everyone need to hire an edit? I know there's a lot of people that are doing self-publishing and stuff like that now, and a lot of times the professional editing doesn't get done, at least not at a good point in the process. Does everyone need an editor, and at what point is it good to start getting your writing professionally edited?
Well, I hope that everybody who's listening or watching loves coffee, because I actually spend my Saturdays over at Starbucks, and there are actually 3 other authors that are there on Saturdays doing writing and all of that, and we've had some wonderful chats. And every single one of them, they're indie authors, and they all will pay for the editor because they know that there's errors in their babies, and so they realize that their focus is just the writing. They just want to tell a story, and they want to tell a good story, but they may not necessarily be good in some of the grammar, some of just the specifics that makes it easier for a reader to understand what they're saying. So
exactly.
Any author out there, independent, going, and really before you submit for a proposal, make sure that it goes through a professional editor. And that is some money. You are going to pay some money to do that. But if you're going to make a proposal and send a proposal out, they're not going to read it. They're not going to spend the time with it that they would if it hasn't gone through a good editing process.
So really, that's something you want to do as soon as the manuscript is actually finished and you're ready to start moving forward to the publication process.
Correct.
Okay, that makes does make a lot of sense. What exactly all falls under the editor's responsibility? I mean, are they involved in just the second and third draft? Do they go after you've self-edited for a certain amount of time? And what all does that process look like when you're working with a client?
Well, I think that the last few clients that I've worked with, they actually have been writing long enough where they actually have people that are good readers, that are friends of theirs, that they call beta readers. They will send that out and have a friend of theirs read it and make sure that there are no questions in their minds as to where the story was going or what the person was trying to say. And so they're the first beta readers, are kind of the first line of editing that and it's usually just a friend that loves to read. And if they're good readers to begin with, they'll probably catch an awful lot right there. And so some of those first draft edits, running through with a really good reader, with somebody that knows you, that knows what you're trying to say, will actually kind of catch some of those really quick errors. And so if an editor gets something that's already gone through that process, it makes my job a whole lot easier. And so it doesn't keep me from finding stuff, but at the same time, it just makes my job go a little bit faster. And then
That's
the thing
good.
is that if the less amount of time I have to work on a project, the cheaper it is for the author to get the job out there. So
you want to make sure there's a degree of polish to the manuscript before you send it off to an editor, and then they catch the stuff that you just didn't know needed fixing.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if the little girl in the story was 12 years old in the beginning of the story and she's 18 at the end, and there's only been a week that's gone by, you know, that just doesn't, that I'm going to catch that, you know. But I think the one thing that I enjoy doing the most is actually working with authors as I'm working on their book. I usually make a phone call as soon as I take a job, and I ask some very detailed questions. And one of the ones that a lot of people, they don't even know how to answer it initially, is when your reader is done with your book, what do you want them to feel like? What are the takeaways that you want them to have for having spent weeks or days or even hours for good readers? What do you want them to take away after having read your book? What do you want them to feel like? And so it gives them a few minutes to think about that and go, you know, this is really what I want people to understand about restoration, or about faith, or I want people to be stronger in their faith when they're done with my book. And I have 3 nuggets in every chapter. Well, part of my job is to make sure that the 3 nuggets are obvious. You know, that people don't have to go hunting for them. That literally a reader will come away with feeling like what you want them to feel like when they're done with the book.
That's good.
I consider that I'm honored to walk alongside an author in birthing their baby, so to speak. I know that any changes that I make to their baby, if they thought it was blonde and I turned it into a brunette, things might not quite work out, you know. So I think it's just a matter of being cautious, but also honoring that author, not changing their voice, and making the changes that will enhance the story and not take away.
Exactly. And we were actually talking about that a few minutes before we started recording, about new authors and just discovering their style and their voice. And I guess that can get a little tricky sometimes when you're going through the edits and they're trying to be protective in areas there shouldn't be protective. And, you know, at the same time, you want to preserve what's authentic to them.
Exactly. And that's extremely important to a good editor. We're the watchguards of what you want your reader to read and come away with. And so if I can make sure that I know what you want that reader to, the knowledge that you want them to have at the end of the book, or the feeling that you want them to come away with, I can be that watchguard and make sure that happens. And that's important to me.
How much is involved in, because not only, I guess when most people think of editors, they think of typos and misspellings and grammar, and it really goes to an even deeper level, as I understand it, just to just the rules of the craft and the rules of story and character and different things, dialogue, even different things that you just don't know when you're a new author.
Correct. And I think probably the hardest part for a new author is having an editor ask them to go places they don't want to go, or they don't know how to go just yet, you know, especially a brand new author. I end up kind of holding their hand as we walk through. But and the thing is even as a new author, and if you were going independently and going and putting it out there yourself, there's a bunch of books out there that just really, oh my goodness, I know they didn't pay for an editor, and they don't care, and really they don't care. They just know that their stuff's out there and that's important. They can call themselves an author. Woohoo! But I think the biggest part is making sure that boy, I'm trying to think of the exact right words. An editor. I know how to read it. Not so good with saying it. It's. I don't want to be I don't want to change the there's a thing called a substantive edit. A substantive edit is where I literally dig kind of deep into your story and go, yes, does the time frame match? Does are the words that you use correct for the time period? Mm-hmm. Say it's an 1800 story and they go, perf. You know, I mean, that nobody in the 1800s would have said PERF exclamation. Mm-hmm. I mean, they just words that we use today, and you're writing a story from back in the 1800s. I've got to make sure that those things are accurate to the time period. And mm-hmm. So, you know, watching an airplane go overhead in the 1700s wouldn't have worked out really well. So
some things are really obvious.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's cultural words. I've worked with a couple authors that are from England and from other places, and not knowing what those words mean, I have to kind of walk hand in hand with an author and ask those kinds of questions and go, is mm-hmm. this real? Would the Boy Scouts have been active during that time period? It was a historical mm-hmm. story, and so she ended up having to stop and do some research herself. So mm-hmm. It's
age as well.
Oh, very definitely. You know,
the age of the characters. I was writing something, and actually Sherry Lynn Bisbano, a mutual friend of ours, was helping me go over it. And she said, "No, this phrase right here is really good. This line that the character said is really good, but it's not. It doesn't work in the context because he's supposed to be, you know, maybe 6-7 years old, and a 7-year-old wouldn't know how to put that in words." Exactly. And it made me really think about it from a whole different point of view. So I imagine a lot mm-hmm. of that's involved as well, contextually.
Very definitely. Now, you can put something out there without sending anything through an editor. Mm-hmm. But if you want people to take you seriously, and if you want people to read beyond the first 10 pages, you spend the money on the editing. Now, if you ask an editor to just proof it, just do proofing, change my commas, check my commas, check my spelling, and that's all I want, then you can do that too. So
there are different levels to how deep you can go.
Yes, very definitely. And I think if you want, basically when I edit, I do everything. I'm mm-hmm. not gonna give somebody I'm not gonna do half a job. That's not my character. My character goes, if this is what I'm charging you for, you're going to get the whole thing. You're mm-hmm. I'm going to make sure that you get the best product, the best story out of it. And maybe I only charged you for what a proofer would charge. I don't know. I just know what my prices mm-hmm. are, and that's the end of, and that's, oh, you got a phone call. Anyway, you're so popular.
It's exhausting. Yeah, I thought I put my phone on silent, but apparently I didn't. It happens to the best of us. I was in an actual conference with a missionary, and he was doing this speech and very, trying to be very professional and everything, talking about his missions abroad. And all of a sudden the phone goes off in the room and everyone's checking their pockets, and he goes, "Oh no." Oops, and it was his. Oops. And I promise not 10 minutes later, a completely another phone went off, and everyone's like, "Oh no, it really is one of us this time," and it was his wife. So we had a very, very good laugh about that. But yeah, exactly. So, and I'm assuming likewise, if your name is going to be stamped on someone's project, you want to make sure that someone can go and look and say, okay, she edited it. This was properly done. She didn't let this, and this go because that's not what the client wanted, Yeah.
And I'm not 100%, honestly. Actually, once I get done working with a project and it goes to the publisher, if it's going to a mainline publisher or a small independent publisher, they have their own editors. I mean, I work for two small publishing houses as a contract editor for them. And so they put it through 2. And so again, I'm not 100%, but there are people that have got checks and balances behind me. But I do the best I can, and I'll occasionally miss 1 or 2, 3 or 4, but probably not too many.
I've often wondered that if I'm reading something that's published, and even like New York Times listed some very good stuff, and every now and then I'll be reading, I'm like, oh, how did that make that through? Just a simple spelling error. And I figured,
yeah, when I was actually the publishing, the managing editor for a publishing house, every single one of our documents went through 40, every book went through 12 editors.
wow.
And we
Wow.
still, and these were high-end editors, and there wasn't a publishing, and we did a book a month, and we put them out there, and every single one, after going through 12 editings and going through different stages and different levels, we still would find, in fact, with the boss, within 5 minutes after the books hit the warehouse, he'd go out and get one, and I don't think even 10 minutes later he's going, Cristel, what about this? So I said, oh, there you go. I said, well, I have a reputation to uphold, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, that was always frustrating.
We have 100,000 word novel. Even 12 people going over it, there's still, I can only catch so much.
Yeah, and I think every editor has their strength. I think I have one that has just literally this huge strength in just commas, because commas they keep changing. I don't know. They hop around on a sentence and they keep changing. And you used to put a comma in front of the word to, TOO. You don't anymore. It's it's like the rules keep changing. So you're always having to stay educated, and you're always having to check. We have a couple good reference materials that we're constantly checking all the time to make sure that we're doing it correctly. So I do the best I can, but I'm not 100% either. I think
my thing is that I use too many commas. I use commas when they're unnecessary for some reason.
Yeah.
And going off of that, what are some of your personal pet peeves as an editor, and some things that maybe like in general, it's maybe even like the inside jokes, oh, there was that, everybody knows to look for that straight away, that maybe some writers might not even think about when they're actually putting it on paper?
I think the hardest thing is people who are just extra wordy and they don't need to be. I think people just want to read how you would have a conversation with someone. There are some really great authors out there today that literally just have that conversational style. And but then you've got the ones that they try to I don't know, it's like they're writing like they're trying to impress how many wonderful big words they know. It's just like that doesn't help a book at all. I think just telling people what's in your heart and doing it in a conversational style makes it so much easier. I think basically words that we repeat a lot, like that and of, okay. And,
very.
Yeah, very. And then I just got done editing one where, like every other sentence was an exclamation point.
Oh, that makes you cringe when you're reading too.
Well, it's just like, okay, I don't want to take away from the enjoyment, because it was a speculative book, and it was a youth, a young adult youth story, and so this young 12-year-old was very exciting, and the story was very exciting, but the more exclamations, the more question marks, the more ellipses that you use, the less powerful they are. And
I like that. Use them sparingly.
Yes, very definitely. I think an exclamation point should be maybe one a book, or and I don't have that rule, but it's like wait a minute, when every other sentence is an exclamation point. But I think I
was in a class with Stephen James one time, and when I wasn't with him, obviously he was teaching the class, and he was talking about eyebrows in the descriptions, character descriptions. He said you can get away with one description of someone's eyebrows every 100,000 words.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Well, and I think one I just got done getting, she kept repeating how old the character was, and I'm going, girlfriend, and it was a female character, and I'm going, we don't want anybody to know how old we are. Just take that right out. You know, it's like I don't want to say that. I wouldn't want to read. You know, anyway, you can say it once and find the one place where it's going to be the most powerful, but take out the rest. I think one of the tricks that I think that is the most powerful or the most helpful to me is words like that, of, every, many, or very, you know, adjectives that you use a lot in your writing. Page by page, just find them and see how many.
Do the little word search.
Oh yeah, and just find out how many that's you've got in there. And 647 on a 30-page paper. You know,
that's a lot.
Yeah, and I think so many times you can actually still read that same sentence without that word being in there, and so it's a very important to minimize the amount of words that we have, because really a publisher will only take so many words per manuscript. So if you're using up your manuscript space and time on the word that, and they just won't look at it if the word count is higher than what they would expect or accept, then they won't even read it. It could be a great story, but you've got too many words for that genre for them to accept it. They don't even look at it. So
what are the acceptable word counts for genres?
Every publisher has its own count. So you're going to want to go on their website, and always, if you're going to submit to a publisher, you go and the very first thing that you need to do is you download a copy of their style sheet. Their style sheet will tell you how they want the document set up. Most style sheets will also tell you, at the end of the style sheet, will tell you what the word count needs to be for each of their genres. But it tells you what an ellipsis is supposed to look like, what your scene changes need to look like. And if you submit based on their style sheet, you can pretty much, you can be most of the time assured that they'll at least read it. They'll at least get started with it, you know, because if you present it in the way that they request. Now, Sherry Lynn Bisbano does have, I work with Sherry in the right proposal. For those of us that work with the right proposal, we know what those style sheets are for the publishers. So we make sure that the documents that we work on the proposals are written in a style and in a manner that publisher will accept. And then if there's more work that needs to be done, we make sure that we're actually talking with that author going, you know, we're going to get you that proposal done, but you've got more work to do in the rest of the manuscript to comply with the style sheet for that publisher.
That's good. That's really good to incorporate that in the service. And I know, going back to you were talking about being, you know, the conversational being, you know, say being a little bit more light, I guess would be because I know I struggled with that when I first got into writing. I would read a lot of the older books, the classics, and while they're very good, the characters, the story is very strong. The style it's written in is a lot heavier than it was now, and I had to sort of wean myself off of the big words and the complicated sentences to be a little bit more digestible. Yeah,
and I think the thing is that when we realize that, sad as it is to say, the median reading level in the United States today is 3rd grade.
Wow, really?
You know, yeah.
I knew it was low, but I didn't know it was I didn't know it was quite that low.
So you really don't want to use. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't people that read higher than that, but the median level of readers today, and I think probably even the saddest. I mean, I've actually had an opportunity to tell somebody this twice in the last week was that the statistics are that 80% of people that have graduated from high school will never read another book the rest of their life.
Wow.
Now,
that's hard for me to imagine. I can't imagine that.
I read 5 or 6 books a week. I cannot even imagine, you know.
Now, is that for pleasure? Is that for
Yes.
pleasure, or is that with
Yeah.
your job too?
When I'm editing, it slows my pleasure reading down, which is kind of always sad for me. But when I get done with an editing project, then I do some fun reading. I'm kind of a fiction girl. And so I love a good story. And that's, as long as I'm reading a good story, I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
if
really all readers want, is a good story, truly.
that's
I mean,
it.
they're not, the eloquence and all that stuff, of course, adds to the enjoyment, but at the base of it,
Yeah.
they just want a good story.
Right. And like you said, they're classics. The classics are, that's history. It's history. And I was never a history girl. It's like, hey, let's leave John Steinbeck back there, his writing style. It's like, and again, in today's reading style, the more difficult you make it, the less people will read. And I did have a chance to actually pick up a Christmas story. I love reading Christmas stories over the holidays, and picked up one that literally had not been edited. And I got about 5 chapters in and go, you know what? 160,000 new titles a month. I'm moving on. And if you don't keep my attention in the first chapter, I'm moving on. There's too many books out there, too many good ones out there that I haven't read yet. And so I think the main thing for an author is catch them in the first chapter. If you don't catch them in the first page, you're not, and if you don't make a point of keeping their attention in that first chapter, they will not stick with it.
The first paragraph, honestly. I mean, I've even heard some people say if you don't catch them in the first sentence, then
that's it. If you don't catch, in fact, I can't even remember which book it was. It's the first sentence was, "Today was not a good day to die."
Oh.
And it's just like, oh, okay, she's got me. She's got my attention. What's going on that she's having to be concerned about? She's going to die today. So, and it was an adventure suspense, but that was the opening sentence. And it's like, okay,
that's a one. I'm very envious. That's a very good opening sentence.
Yeah, you can't use that, by the way.
No. Of course not.
Yeah.
But you can learn from it.
Oh, I know. And so it's just like, wait a minute, if you don't make a special point, and I've worked with a couple adventure suspense authors where it's like, okay, I'm snoozing halfway through. And so I ended up having to work with this particular author on going, okay, I want you to go back to the drawing board, and I want you to get a big white board or construction paper or whatever, and I want you to go chapter by chapter and tell what the suspenseful parts are of each one. And when you get to chapters that don't have any, that's where you need to put it. It's like you create some kind of mind map that's going to follow your book. And if there's nothing but storyline, oh dear, but there's no suspense in it, you've lost them. They've put the book down. Let's keep the suspense going, but you need to know where the dead spots are so that you can add those elements in. And so and now, is that something that a typical editor would actually really do? Maybe not, but I do. I want my author's baby to be successful. I want that book to go out there and do exactly what the author wants it to do. And so I'm going to do everything I can to make it the best it can be. And that's basically, if you've got a good editor, they'll take your hand and they'll walk you through the process. They'll actually, in fact, I also work with author, and I'm not pumping me, I'm just editing in general. A good editor will actually also, as a first-time author, will show you what to do to help market, because marketing's going to be part of your baby, after it's all said and done. So once you pass it off to the editor, and the editor and you have got it, and you pushed it onto the publisher, it's gone into the publisher's docket for print, however long down the road it is. And at that point, your job is to start pumping the pavement for local author interviews, TV or radio or whatever. But, Barnes & Noble does a lovely job and all of the local bookstores. Go around and just ask if they would be willing to do a local author signing. I have seen so many of them where the authors that I work with, they literally sell out.
That's wonderful. Yeah,
So
that's fantastic.
Helping you walk through what you need to do afterwards isn't a normal editor's process, but having worked with, I've actually also worked as a retailer for CBA, for Christian Booksellers Association, and so have actually had the opportunity of working with so many of the Christian authors and what they do to market their books now that they're having to do so much of it because the publishers don't anymore. I mean, some do, some don't. And so if you've got footwork to do after that book is on its way to print, we kind of go through some of those suggestions too. So
that's awesome. I've really enjoyed talking with you, and I've learned so much. I can't wait to apply some of this stuff to my manuscript. Before we go, I did want to ask if, I know we've got a ton of really good information. If there was one nugget that you wanted someone to really take away, a new author, maybe someone who's not even finished with their first manuscript, what would that be?
Don't be afraid and don't be discouraged when an editor changes something. I think probably the biggest thing with a first-time author is you get that manuscript back from me, and you see all of the markings and all of the changes, and the thing is I'm an editor, so it's hard for me to turn the editor off, but I would love to write a book myself and have started, and I sent it off to a friend who is an editor, and she sent it back to me, and I saw all of the changes and all of the markings, and why did you say this, and what about this, and blah blah blah. I really got so instantly discouraged that I didn't ever go any farther with it anymore. And so I think I've seen that side of it, and I know that that's how my authors feel once they get my first set of changes. And so it's literally, don't be afraid of the editor's marks and changes, because everything that they want for you, if you're working with somebody that you enjoy, that you really have a connection with, all they're trying to do is make it better. So don't be threatened by it. Take it in and, put it away for the night, cry, eat some ice cream, do whatever.
Drink some coffee.
Drink lots of coffee, and I should have bought stock in Starbucks long before I started editing. But anyway, but there will be you will feel threatened. Not that you mean to. It's just that it's like you think you've written this beautiful baby. You've literally delivered this beautiful baby, and all of a sudden I've changed it. I've made so many changes, and it's just like, it's so overwhelming that it just feels, your heart just sinks. And so that's the one thing. It's like, work with an editor that understands what you're going through and isn't gonna beat you over for not doing it right. As a good editor, if you have a good editor, they're going to understand, and they're going to walk you through each of those changes. And so, and then if you really actually get a chance to say, no, I don't want you to change this, so it's like, it's a give and take between an editor and an author. And again, it's not my book, it's your book. So I'm not going to change any more than you want changed, but I am going to maybe challenge, I'm going to ask some questions. Well, what if you do this instead and bring this character out maybe a little bit more? And I think then you've got stronger dialogue. Oh, okay, now I get it.
I would love to do an entire show on dialogue.
Well, yeah. Well, that would be a little bubbly. That would just, all those little bubbles. And dialogue is, it's so hard to write how a conversation really would take place. And you see it in your head, but for some reason it's not on the paper the way you're seeing it in your head. So that is very difficult, but a good editor will help you make sure that it balances out, and that your conversation, they're going to maybe make some suggestions on how the conversation can be stronger, by just adding 1 or 2 more lines. What would that be? You know, and they're going to challenge you to push just a little bit more. And the thing is that what'll end up happening as a watch guard, as an editor, again, I'm a watch guard to make sure that nothing happens to your story. Nothing happens untoward that's going to turn it into something else. And a lot of first-time authors are very afraid of editors, that they're going to do that. And a good editor is not going to change your story. And any changes that we make is for the sake of making it stronger.
So don't be defensive, and be open, and don't be afraid of your editor. Is the moral that we take.
Yeah, don't do like I did. And don't just go, okay, never mind. It was trash. I'm putting it away. I'm just going to hit the delete button. Oh, dear God, no.
That sinking moment when when your computer crashes for updates and you're halfway through the
Yeah. A good editor will literally understand what you went through to create this story, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. You know, you went through some stuff to create this, and my job is to protect that and make it be the best it can be. So
that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
I totally appreciated it.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you guys for watching Genre Chat, and we will see you next time.